Welcome to the second session of our beautiful topic, literacy linguistics. And we'll continue with linguistic components introduction. We now transition to chapter 3, where we will explore the linguistic components critical to literacy, understanding the architecture of language itself, provide the foundation for effective literacy and instruction. Language is an incredibly complex system, but we can break it down into four interconnected systems that work together to enable reading and writing. These are the sound system, the world building system, the sentence building system, and the meaning systems. First is the sound system, phonetics and phonology. Phonetics examines the physical properties of speech sounds, while phonology studies how these sounds function and the pattern in particular languages. Second is the word building system, morphology. This gives how meaningful units combine to create words. Understanding morphology unlocks vocabulary exponentially. Third is a sentence building system, syntax and grammar. This governs how words combine into meaningful phrases, clauses, and sentences. Fourth is the meaning systems, semantics and the pragmatics. Semantics deals with literal meaning, while pragmatics examines how context shapes interpretation. Mastering these components allows educators to analyze precisely where breakdowns occur and design targeted interventions. When a student struggles, we can ask, is this a phonological issue, a decoding problem, syntactic challenge, a vocabulary limitation? Each requires different instructional responses. This diagnostic precision separates expert literacy teachers from novices. Without linguistic knowledge, teachers may vaguely describe students as having a trouble with reading. With linguistic knowledge, they can specify this student has strong phonological awareness and decoding skills, but limited morphological knowledge, making multi-syllabic word reading difficult. That precision guides intervention. Phonetics and phonology explained. Let's dive deeply into phonetics and phonology, the first linguistic system critical to literacy. Phonetics examines the physical properties of speech sounds, how we produce vowels and consonants using our articulatory system. Is the study of actual sounds regardless of meaning. For example, phonetics describe how we produce the sound P. We close our lips, uh, build up air pressure, and then release it. The P sound is a voiceless, billable, uh, bilabal stop. Voiceless means the vocal cords do not vibrate. Bilabal means both lips are involved. Stop means airflow is completely plugged and then released. Phonology, by contrast, studies how these sounds function in particular languages, including patterns of sound combinations and syllable structures. Different languages use different sounds and have different rules about how sounds can combine. For literacy, this knowledge is absolutely crucial. Teachers must understand that English contains approximately 44 phonemes, individual speech sounds, but only 26 letters. This mismatch creates the need for digraphs, two letters representing one sound, like SH, blends multiple consonants consonant sounds in sequence like STR, and complex spelling patterns. This is why English spelling is so challenging. We do not have a one-to-one correspondence between sounds and letters. Instead, we have complex patterns that must be systematically taught. Understanding phonology also helps teachers diagnose reading difficulties when students struggle with decoding. Phonological knowledge helps pinpoint whether they can't discriminate sounds, a phonological processing issue, or can't remember which letters represent those sounds, a phonics knowledge gap. These different problems require different intervention. If a student aren't and can't hear the difference between M and N, they need phonological awareness training. If they can hear a difference but don't know which letter represents each sound, they need phonics instruction. Teaching becomes more effective when we understand phenomena like co-articulation, how sounds blend is connected speech, and the phonological rules like Y, K is silent in knife. When students struggle, phonological diagnosis. Let's apply phonological knowledge to diagnostic teaching. The slide explains how understanding phonetics and phonology helps us diagnose and address reading difficulties with precision. When students struggle with decoding, phonological knowledge helps us ask the right question. Can this student discriminate sounds here? The difference between similar phonemes like B and P or E and I? Or can they hear differences but do not know which letters represent those sounds? These are fundamentally different problems requiring different solutions. A student who can discriminate sounds has a phonological processing processing issue. They need intensive work on phonological awareness, listening activities that help them tune into the sound structure of language. This might involve rhyming games, sound matching activities, and the phoneme segmentation practice. Oral activities with no print involved initially. Only after they can reliably hear and manipulate sounds should we connect those sounds to letters. By contrast, a student who can reliably discriminate sounds but doesn't know letter sound correspondences has a phonics knowledge gap. They need explicit systematic instruction connecting phonemes to graphemes, the letters that represent them. This linguistic awareness transforms phonics instruction from rote memorization into systematic exploration of sound symbol relationships. Instead of simply drilling letter sounds, we help students understand the patterns in how English represents speech in print. For example, understanding co-articulation, how sounds influence each other in connected speech explains why beginning readers sometimes struggle to segment words into individual sounds. In the word cat, the KAT sounds actually overlap in production. They're not three discrete units cleanly separated. Understanding phonological rules explains phenomena that might otherwise seem arbitrary. Why is K silent in knife? No and knee. There is actually a phonological explanation in English that allow KN clusters at the beginning of words anymore. Though Old English did, the spelling preserves the historical pronunciation. This type of knowledge makes us more effective teachers. Morphology introduction. Let's turn into morphology, which explores how meaningful units combine to create words. Morphology is perhaps the most utilized area of linguistic knowledge and literacy instruction. Yet, it's incredibly powerful. First, let's clarify terminology. A morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in language. Some morphemes can stand alone. There are called free morphemes. Words like book, happy, run, and blue are free morphemes. They carry meaning independently. Other morphemes must attach to other units. These are bound morphemes. Prefixes like UNRE and BRE are bound morphemes. They carry meaning, but they cannot stand alone. Suffixes like ness, TIOM, and lie, and LY are also bound morphemes. Understanding morphology unlocks vocabulary growth exponentially. It is why if you recognize that unbelievable contains meaning not, believe the roots, and able meaning capable of, you can figure out the meaning even if you've never seen the words before, not capable of being believed. This morphological analysis is a powerful world learning strategy. It works across thousands of words. The prefix re means again or back in words like return, review, reread, reconsider, and hundreds more. Learning one prefix unlocks countless words. The suffix tion turns verbs into nouns. Educate becomes education, celebrate becomes celebration, hesitate becomes hesitation. Understanding this morphological pattern helps students both read and spell these words. For students, especially those beyond primary grades, morphology is crucial for tackling the multi-syllabic academic vocabulary in textbooks. Words like photosynthesis, telecommunication, and biomechanics become manageable when students can break them into meaningful chunks. Photowrite, SYN together, these potting. Morphology presents a dramatic shift from teaching vocabulary word by word, teaching to pattern that unlock thousands of words simultaneously. Morphology as compensatory strategy. Now let's explore how morphology provides powerful compensatory strategy for struggling readers. When decoding bogs down in complex words, breaking them into meaningful chunks aids both pronunciation and comprehension. Consider a student who encounter the word unbelievable. If they try to decode it letter by letter, they might get lost in the middle and produce something like UN, Bell, I, VAB, ULL. It's a struggle and they may lose meaning in the process. But if they can identify morphological boundaries, UN, a prefix they know, believe, a root word they recognize, and able, a suffix they've learned. They can break the word into manageable chunks. Unbelievable, suddenly it's three familiar parts rather than one overwhelming word. This strategy works across academic vocabulary, reconstruction, again, construct, build, TION, the act of building again. Bio degradable bio life, the downgrade step, capable of being broken down by living organisms. Teaching students to recognize common prefixes like RE, PRE, UM, suffixes like TION, mentology, NESS, and roots, especially Greek and Latin origins. dramatically improves reading of academic texts. This is particularly important because academic vocabulary is heavily Latinate. In everyday conversation, we use mostly Anglo-Saxon words, think, make, house, but in academic texts, we encounter Latinate vocabulary. Consider construct residence. Understanding morphology helps students navigate this register shift. Morphological instruction also strengthen spelling. Students learn the construction and spelling of meaningful units like sign and signature and design. Despite pronunciation differences, the silent G makes sense when you understand the morphological relationship. Research shows that morphological instruction significantly improves reading comprehension, spelling, and vocabulary acquisition grade levels, yet it's often neglected in favor of phonics only instruction. We need both. Syntax and grammar overview. Now we turn to syntax and grammar. How words combine into meaningful phrases, clauses, and sentences. Syntax governs the rules for building sentences, while grammar encompasses the broader system of language structure rules. Why does syntax matter for literacy? Because readers unconsciously rely on syntactic knowledge to predict upcoming words, repair comprehension breakdowns, and untangle complex sentences. Consider the sentences: the dog that chased the cat that ate the mouse ran away. That's a grammatically correct sentence, but it's syntactically complex with multiple embedded clauses. Understanding it requires parsing the systematic structure and the syntactic structure, identifying which clauses modify which nouns. Skilled readers do this automatically, but struggling readers often get lost in complex syntax. They may understand each individual word but fail to comprehend the sentence because they cannot follow the syntactic structure. Understanding phrase structure helps readers group words meaningfully, and the big brown dog skills readers automatically group those words as a noun phrase, processing them as a unit rather than four separate words. Understanding clause types, independent and dependent, helps readers recognize how ideas are related. And although it was raining, we went to the park. The dependent clause, although it was raining, sets up a contrast with the main clause. Understanding grammatical functions, subject, predicate, object helps readers identify who is doing what to whom. This is especially important in complex sentences where word order may not follow simple subject verb object patterns. For English learners, explicit syntax instruction clarifies differences between their first language and the English structure. For example, adjective placement differs across languages. In English, adjectives precede nouns, red car, but in Spanish, they typically follow. Teaching syntax also improves writing. Students who grasp sentence variety and complexity craft more mature, effective compositions. Explicit grammar instruction. Let's discuss how explicit grammar instruction, when connected to real reading and writing, enhances comprehension significantly. This is an important point because grammar instruction has been controversial in education. Traditional grammar instruction, having students parse sentences and memorize rules out of context, has been shown to be ineffective. Diagramming sentences doesn't improve writing. Memorizing definitions or part or parts of speech doesn't improve comprehension. However, functional grammar instruction, teaching grammar in the context of real reading and writing, and showing students how grammatical structures affect meaning is highly effective. For example, teaching students about passive voice isn't just about identifying it. The ball was thrown by the boy. It's about understanding why authors choose passive voice, often to emphasize the action or result rather than the actor, or to avoid naming who's responsible. Mistakes were made is really different from I made mistakes. So understanding rhetoric clauses helps students comprehend the complex sentences, and the student who studied hardest passed the test. The rhetoric clause who studied hardest to define student readers must understand this relationship to comprehend the sentence accurately. Understanding embedded sentences helps readers navigate academic prose in the theory that um, Einstein proposed physics. Einstein proposed a in the theory that Einstein proposed revolutionized the physics. There is a sentence embedded within a sentence. Recognizing this structure is crucial for comprehension. For English learners, explicit syntax instruction clarifies English structures that differ from their home language. Spanish speakers learning English, for example, benefit from explicit instruction about English word order, auxiliary verbs, and article usage, features that differ from Spanish. The key is connecting grammar instruction to meaningful reading and writing. We teach grammatical structures as they appear in texts students are reading, and as they're needed to in writing students are producing. Grammar becomes a tool for making meaning, not an abstract set of rules to memorize. Semantics and pragmatics. Finally, let's examine semantics and pragmatics. The meaning systems in language, these are perhaps the most intuitive linguistic components for teachers, where they deserve careful attention. Semantics studies literal meaning, word definition, semantic relationships like synonyms and antonyms, um, hypernyms and hypernyms, and how meanings combine this in sentences, rich vocabulary, knowledge form the bedrock of reading comprehension. Students simply cannot understand text containing too many unknown words. Research suggested that readers need to know about 95% of words in a text for adequate comprehension, and 98% for comfortable independent reading. This threshold has important implications. If students do not know even 5% of words on and 20, comprehension suffers dramatically. This is why vocabulary instruction is so critical, especially for students from lower uh, socioeconomic backgrounds who often have smaller vocabularies due to less, less exposure to rich oral language and books. If effective vocabulary instruction goes beyond memorizing definitions, it involves exploring word relationships, understanding that gigantic, enormous, and huge are synonyms with slightly different connotations. It involves understanding multiple meanings. Strike has different meanings. In lightning strike, strike match, workers strike and strike out in baseball. It involves contextual usage, understanding that some words are formal residence while others are casual, and knowing when each is appropriate. Pragmatics examines how context shapes interpretation, understanding idioms, the figurative language tune, implied meanings, and the social conventions of language use. This is crucial for full comprehension because so much meaning goes beyond literal words. Consider idioms like it's raining cats and dogs or break a leg. Literal interpretation leads to complete confusion. Students must learn that these expressions have conventional meanings different from their literal words. Understanding sarcasms requires pragmatic knowledge, recognizing that tune and the context can reveal literal meaning. Oh, great! Another rainy day likely means the opposite of what the words literally say. For students, on the autism spectrum, pragmatics can be especially challenging. They may interpret language very literally, missing implied meanings, sarcasm, or social nonsense, explicit, explicit instruction in pragmatics helps the students access full meaning. For students from different cultural backgrounds, pragmatic conventions may differ. Eye contact, physical distance, directness of communication, these vary across cultures and affect how language is interpreted. Teaching these layers of meaning transforms literal comprehenders into sophisticated readers who grasp subtlety, inference, and authorial intent. This instruction helps all students, but is particularly crucial for those who struggle with language beyond the literal level. Sociolinguistics and literary introduction. So we established the linguistic foundation of literacy, philology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. Now we will explore how language varies across social contexts and what this means for literacy education. So this slide introduces chapter 4, sociolinguistics and literacy. Sociolinguistics is a study of how language varies and change in social contexts. It examines the relationship between language and society, asking questions like how does language differ across regions? How does social class affect language use? How do ethnic communities develop distinct language varieties? These questions might seem um, tangential to literacy and instruction, but they're actually central to equitable education. Let me explain why. Every student comes to school speaking a particular variety of language shaped by their region, community, family, and social experience. For some students, their home language closely matches the language used in English in school and in books. For other students, there is a significant mismatch. This mismatch isn't about one variety being right and another being wrong. All language varieties are linguistically valid. They follow systematic rules and serve cumulative functions effectively. However, schools and society privilege certain varieties over others, giving some students an unearned advantage. Let me give you three main areas of language variations: regional variations, social class makers, and ethnic varieties. Regional variation refers to geographic dialects with distinct pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammatical patterns. Southern American English, Boston English, and California English each follow systematic rules, though they differ from each other and form the so-called standard American English taught in schools. Social class makers show how economics status correlates with language features, including vocabulary breadth, sentence complexity, and discourse styles. These differences reflect experiences and opportunity, not intelligence or potential. This is crucial to understand language variations by social class doesn't indicate cognitive differences. Ethnic varieties include African American vernacular English, Chicano English, and other ethnic dialects that possess complex grammatical systems distinct from standard English. These represent rich linguistic heritage rather than broken English, a characterization that is both linguistically inaccurate and deeply harmful. Understanding sociolinguistics is essential for equitable literacy education because it prevents us from pathologizing students' home languages and helps us building bridges between home and school language rather than demanding students abandon their linguistic identities. Um, so sociolinguistics and literacy, regional variation, social class makers, ethnic varieties. Let's examine the three types of language variations more closely with specific examples that illustrate their systematic nature. Starting with regional variations, geographic dialects feature distinctive pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammatical patterns that are completely systematic and role governed. Southern American English, for example, includes features like pen and pen merger, where these words sounds identical. The use of y all as a plural form of you and distinctive vowel pronunciation. Boston English features including R dropping after vowels, so park the car might sound like park the car, and distinctive vowel sounds. California English includes the features like the cut, coat, measure, um, where these words sound identical and particular intonation patterns. None of these dialects is more correct than the others. They're different varieties of the same language, each with systematic patterns. The fact that textboxes and the formal instruction use a standardized variety doesn't make that variety inherently superior. It's a social convention, not linguistic one. Moving to social class makers, research shows that socioeconomic status correlates with certain language features. Children from higher income families typically have exposure to broader vocabulary. They hear more words and the more diverse words in daily conversation. They may use more complex sentence structures because they've been exposed to more elaborated speech patterns. These differences reflect experience and opportunity, not in innate ability. A child who has been read to daily from infancy and engaged in extended conversations about box ideas and experiences will naturally develop different language patterns than a child without those experiences. This doesn't make one child smarter, it makes them differently experienced. The danger is interpreting these differences as deficits. Historically, educators have labeled working class language as restricted or deficient compared to middle class language. This defect perspective is both inaccurate and harmful. All social class varieties are linguistically complete. They can express any idea, though they may do so differently. Finally, ethnic varieties, African American vernacular English, also called African American English, is perhaps the most studied ethnic variety in American English. It has systematic grammatical features that differ from standard American English. For example, AAVE uses habitual B to indicate ongoing and repeat action. He be working, meaning he works regularly, as opposed to he working, which means he working right now. AAVE includes zero qabla, the absence of is or are in certain contexts where standard English requires them. She tired instead of she's tired. This isn't random or incorrect. It follows specific phonological and grammatical rules about when the copula can be omitted. Chicano English, spoken by many Latino Americans, includes distinctive phonological features, vocabulary borrowings from Spanish, and the grammatical patterns influenced by Spanish but following English rules. These ethnic dialects represent rich linguistic heritage. They've developed over generations in specific communities and serve important identity and solidarity functions. They are not broken English, not errors to be eradicated, um, but legitimate language varieties deserving respect. The role of dialects in literacy development. Now let's address the crucial question: what role does dialects and vernaculars vernaculars play in literacy development? This has sparked considerable debate and research, and the answers have important implications for teaching. Students who speak African American vernacular, English, or other non mainstream varieties face unique challenges in literacy education. Their home language differs systematically from the language of school texts and instruction. This creates a linguistic gap that must be navigated. For decades, deficit perspectives blamed these students for their language, demanding they abandon home dialects. Students were corrected constantly, told their language was wrong, inferior, broken. Teachers viewed dialects features in students' speech and writing as errors to be eliminated. This approach was both linguistically ignorant and pedagogically harmful. Linguistically, it failed to recognize that all dialects are systematic and role governed. Pedagogically, it damaged students' linguistic identities and disengaged them from schooling. Modern sociolinguistics research reveals the profound harm in this defect approach. When students receive messages that their home language and by extension their family communities and the culture is deficient, their academic engagement plummets, linguistic prejudice damages students' identity, self-esteem, and motivation. Moreover, research shows that demanding students abandon their home dialect doesn't actually improve their learning. In fact, it often impedes learning by creating anxiety, resentment, and cognitive conflict. So, what's the alternative? The most effective approach honors linguistic diversity while building comprehensive and academic English. This is a both and approach, not either or. This means first recognizing the features like AAVE's habitual B or zero copula follows grammatical rules. They're not errors resulting from carelessness or ignorance. When a student says she tired, that's grammatical in their home dialect, just as she's tired is grammatical in standard in English. Uh, Second, it means building bridges between home and school language through contrastive analysis. This involves explicitly teaching how features differ between varieties. For example, in our home language, we might say she tired, but in school English and in writing, we say she is tired. Both are correct in their contexts. This approach, sometimes called code switching instruction, frames standard English as an additional resource rather than a replacement for home language. Students learn to switch between varieties depending on context, much like they might speak differently with friends versus in a formal interview. Third, it means incorporating texts that reflect linguistic diversity, books where characters speak in authentic dialects, texts written in vernacular varieties. This validates students' home languages while also exposing them to different varieties. When students feel their home language is valued, they engage more deeply in literacy learning. They're more willing to take on the challenge of learning academic English because it's framed as adding to their linguistic repertoire, not erasing their identity. Effective literacy instruction for dialect speakers. Let's get specific about what effective literacy instruction looks like for students who speak non-mainstream dialects. This requires both linguistic knowledge and cultural responsiveness. First, effective instruction honors linguistic diversity through explicit recognition and validation. This might mean displaying posters celebrating different dialects, reading books featuring diverse language varieties, and having explicit discussions about how language varies and that all varieties are valid for communication in their contexts. Teachers might say something like languages and dialects are like different tools. You wouldn't use a hammer when you need a screwdriver, right? Similarly, we use different language varieties in different situations. The way you talk with your friends might be different from how you talk in a college interview, and that's perfectly normal and appropriate. Second, effective instruction builds competence in academic English through contrastive analysis and code switching instruction. Constructive analysis means explicitly teaching structural differences between home dialect and school English. For AAVE speaker, this might include lessons like in AAVE, we can say he my friend, without the verb about the school English. We need to include is. He is my friend. Let's practice translating sentences between these varieties. For application English speakers, it might address features like prefixing on verbs. She was working versus she was working. The key is making these differences explicit rather than simply correcting students' language. We're teaching them about language variation, not telling them their language is wrong. Code switching instruction explicitly teaches when and where different varieties are expected. Students learn that formal writing typically requires a standard English, but informal communication might appropriate use. Home dialect job interviews might call for standard English, but community gatherings might use home variety. This doesn't mean students must always code switch to be successful. That perpetuates linguistic hierarchies, but it does mean giving students tools to make informed choices about language use in different contexts. Third, effective instruction addresses transfer issues in reading and writing. When students read to write in standard English, their home dialects may influence their interpretation or production. Teachers who understand dialect features can distinguish between dialects, influenced variations, and actual errors. Third, effective instruction addresses transfer issues in reading and writing. When students read or write in standard English, their home dialect may influence their interpretation or production. Teachers who understand dialect features can distinguish between dialect influenced variations and actual errors. For example, if an AAVE speaking student writes, "She walk to school every day," with the editing, this reflects dialect rules, not lack of grammatical knowledge. This instructional response should focus on standard English conventions for written English, not remedial grammar. If a student writes the dog, he chased the cat, including both a noun and pronoun subject. This might reflect home language patterns and needs explicit instruction about standard English subject structures, not generic grammar practice. Fourth, effective instruction incorporates culturally relevant texts and examples that reflect students' experiences and communities. When students see their language, culture, and experiences reflected in curriculum, engagement increases dramatically. This might means this might mean using texts by authors who write in vernacular varieties, discussing code switching in literature and media, and incorporating students' own linguistic experiences into lessons. Cultural assumptions in texts. Let's examine another critical aspect of sociolinguistics and literacy, the cultural assumption embedded in texts. This is often invisible to teachers from mainstream backgrounds but creates significant barriers for students different cultural contexts. Mainstream children's literature and educational texts often reflect middle class European American experiences and values. These texts assume certain shared cultural knowledge, references, and narrative structures that not all students possess. Let me give you specific examples of cultural assumptions in texts. In texts, many books assume readers understand Thanksgiving traditions, pilgrims, turkeys, family gatherings, but these traditions aren't universal. Students from immigrant families may have never celebrated Thanksgiving. Texts use idioms and metaphors rooted in particular cultural experiences. Strike out makes sense if you understand baseball. Monday morning quarterback, assume knowledge of American football, balling yourself up by your bootstraps, references, footwear, and historical context that may be unfamiliar. Many texts assume nuclear family structures, mother, father, children as the norm. But students may live with grandparents in multi-generational households with same-sex parents or in other configurations when texts consistently represent only one family structure, other students feel invisible. Narrative structures vary across cultures. Western literature typically follows linear plot structure: introduction, rising action, a climax, falling action, resolution, but other cultures have different narrative traditions. Some emphasize circular structures where stories return to their beginning. Some include extensive tangential details Western audiences might consider irrelevant. When students from cultures with different narratives, traditions encounter Western story structures in school, they may struggle not because they lack comprehension skills, but because the structure is unfamiliar. Similarly, different cultures have different norms and around argumentation and persuasion. Western academic writing values dialectic thesis, a statement followed by liner supporting arguments. Some cultures favor indirect approaches, circling around points rather than stating from directly. Neither is inherently better. They're culturally different. Background knowledge assumptions create perhaps the most persuasive barriers. Texts assume readers know historical events, um geographic locations, cultural practices, and shared references that vary tremendously by background. Text might casually reference the Civil War, as assuming readers have basic knowledge about this conflict, but students from other countries may have never studied it. A story set in rural America might reference framing practices unfamiliar to urban students. So, what's the solution? We can't possibly teach every culture references students might encounter, but we can do several things. First, we can select diverse texts that reflect varied cultures, perspectives, and experiences, ensuring all students sometimes see their own experiences reflected and learn about others' experiences. Second, we can explicit teach cultural references and the background knowledge when introducing texts before reading. We might review key concepts, cultural practices, or historical contexts necessary for comprehension. Third, we can have explicit discussions about whose stories get told in literature and whose perspectives are centered. This critical literacy approach helps students analyze power and representation in texts. Fourth, we can validate diverse cultural knowledge students bring when discussing families. We can explicitly acknowledge that families take many forms when discussing traditions. We can invite students to share their own cultural practices by acknowledging that literacy itself is culturally situated, shaped by values about what counts as reading, what texts matter, and how literacy should be reused. We create classrooms where all students can see themselves as capable, valued readers and writers. This is essential for equity. Thank you so much for watching me teaching you this wonderful second session of literacy linguistics, and we'll continue the last and final session next time, inshallah, and we will talk about inclusive literacy education. Until next time, tata for now.